Hello, hi, welcome back to the City Girl Writer channel. And today I'm actually doing a wrap-up video. Because if you've been in my channel for a little while, you'll notice that I didn't do any wrap-ups at all last year. But since we are in March 2023, I figured let's talk about January and February, shall we? So, in January, I read the most amount of books I've ever read in 1 month, and that is 10. I read 10 books in January. I have to say, I am genuinely surprised that I read that much in 1 month. And as far as number of pages, that's 3,046 pages. That's a lot. And as far as average rating-wise, I have a 4.33, which is really good, to be honest. That's pretty good for 10 books, too. I gotta say, that's great. Great for me. So, let's get to all the books that I read in January. Now, these first two books I've already kind of mentioned in earlier videos. Like, I remember talking about these books a little bit in the January book tag, and the New Year booktuber tag as well. So I will link those videos like in the cards or down below so y'all can check them out. But let's just start with the first read of the year. So, the very first book that I read in this year, which I, again, have mentioned a couple times, is Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This is an adult sci-fi fantasy that's also queer and a space opera. Now, I've never really heard of a space opera until a little bit late last year and early this year, because I wasn't totally sure what a space opera really is. Now, based on my understanding, now if I'm wrong, then I don't know, I probably put a real definition in the screen or something. But based on my understanding, a space opera is kind of like a soap opera, but it takes place in space. It's like it's like an emotional journey that can be dramatic, I guess. It has its own tropes and stuff, but like, I don't know. Again, I'm new to the whole soap opera genre thing. Well, actually, soap operas is actually as a subgenre in science fiction, which this is sci-fi fantasy, so it makes sense. Now, I'm not going to talk really about synopses because, again, first of all, this is actually pretty popular. So, if you don't know what it is, I think I want to say the best way, but like the tagline, this little blurb here in the cover says, "Lesbian necromancers explore a haunted gothic palace in space." Which honestly is actually what this book actually is about. And there's a murder mystery, like literally, like we follow Gideon trying to leave this place called the Ninth House. And she is not able to. She's an indentured servant to the Ninth House. So now then she has to work with Hera Hark, who is the heir of the Ninth House. And Gideon has to work with Hera Hark in order to achieve immortality by being her cavalier, which is pretty much like your swords person to protect the heirs of the houses and stuff. And yeah, there's a murder in here, so there's a murder mystery, there's a puzzle piece kind of mystery aspect as well that follows trying to figure out how we can achieve lictorhood, which is how they achieve immortality. So yeah, there is actually kind of a lot going on, and to be honest, this book is it is confusing, and to be honest, I wasn't 100% a big fan of Tamsin Muir's writing in here. I truly believe it's kind of convoluted. Even though it was very fun, it still felt convoluted. I'm just like, do we have to make it this difficult to understand what the heck is going on? Like, if you ask me about this world, I can give you maybe I don't know necessarily how to describe this world, because I don't even know. Again, I don't know how to describe the world or how things work. I'm just glad that I have a paperback edition of this, because the paperback has like a glossary. So yeah, I have some tabs here for like sections, but I have this little bit of a blue tab here that features a glossary that has like keywords and some explanations and pronunciation guide. I'm just like, yeah, when there's more books, there's going to be a fourth book in this series. So yeah, Gideon the Ninth is part of a series. It's part of the series called the Locked Tomb series, which is just Gideon the Ninth, Harold the Ninth, Nona the Ninth, and then there'll be a final book in the series, which is Alecto the Ninth, which I think, as of right now, I think it comes out October 10th. Hopefully the date does not change, but as of right now, I believe it comes out in October, so that's what I believe anyways. So yes, I will be continuing the series. In fact, I've already started on book number 2, And I gave this book 4.5 stars because I really did enjoy the characters here. I really like Gideon. I think she's so funny and she's so unserious. Like, she's such an unserious protagonist that I'm just like, you really the main character here? I'm following you and all of this? All right, fine, whatever. But I'm having a great time. I really liked the progression between the progression of the relationship between Gideon and Harrowhark, because like I truly did not know going into this that this would be like some sort of enemies to lovers. Like, the enemies to lovers between Gideon and Harrow are like very much on a slow burn sense, and I'm just like, huh. But it's also interesting too because like it's actually really, really great. Like, they're actual enemies. They really do hate each other, and I felt the hate. But then I see that they start to learn to trust each other, which therefore they also learn to develop feelings for each other. All I'm just going to say is that I really like Gideon the Ninth. I'm definitely continuing on with the series, even though it's confusing. And I could have been at 5 stars if the writing was a little bit less convoluted, or at least less confusing to understand than, like, when I got to, like, the middle. I think when I got to, like, 100 pages, this is when the book started to make a little bit more sense. Because, like, you really just jump into the world with this one. I'm like, damn. Like, no warning. You jump into the world, you're kind of just trying to figure out how things work. So 4.5 stars, could have been a 5 if the writing was a little bit less convoluted and the world building felt a little bit more clear, which again was a tribute to the writing. But nonetheless, though, I do recommend this. Though content warning though for death, murder, gore, violence. There is a character that is terminally ill, so something like a cancer. So I just want to let you know about that. I'm just gonna say is that definitely pick up this series, and definitely listen to audiobook. If you're a person that likes audiobooks or someone that can listen through audio, definitely recommend the audiobook for this, because I read this via audio and hybrid read. Like, I only listened to the audiobook when I had the physical copy. Y'all will never catch me, well, I hope I don't jinx myself when I'm reading Harrow, but like, y'all not gonna catch me reading these books without the audiobook, okay? That's not happening. Maybe when I get to Electo the Ninth, maybe I will get off the audiobook, but for now, no, because the narrator, Morwa Quirk, is such a great narrator for this series, and I only read like 1 book, and I'm already started like Harrow, and like, she's just great. Okay, that's it. Anyways, that's it. That's all my thoughts here. But like, yes, again, please read. It's definitely, even though again it's not a 5, but like, it feels like a favorite for me, even though I just started this series. So okay, now the next book that I read was The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This is Erin Morgenstern's debut novel. I did read The Starless Sea last year in December, and I remember giving The Starless Sea like 4.25 stars. I definitely enjoyed it, even though it is very confusing, and that one was very lyrical. This one is a lot more straightforward of a plot, so if you read The Starless Sea and you weren't a fan of it, I think you might be more of a fan of The Night Circus. This is an adult, historical, fantasy, romance, magical realism kind of book. I know, I just said like a whole bunch of genres. Like, what? Yeah, because it takes place in a historical setting. There's some little bit fantastical elements, but also, I guess, magical realism somehow? I don't know. Storygraphs show magical realism, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, how? But whatever. But there's definitely romance, because we follow 2 characters, Celia and Marco. There's this competition between the 2 of them as far as who's going to be the best magician, but they fall in love, which could put the competition at risk. And I was pretty much vibing with this book. I really thought this was really good. I liked the writing here. It's not like purple prose or lyrical like The Starless Sea, which is fine. I didn't expect it to, based on what the synopsis of this book is. But I was a little bit disappointed when I got more further into the book, because I actually started off the book annotating it. Like, I had highlights, I was underlining and stuff. I even used to put tabs in here, but I just took out the tabs because I was kind of, like, I enjoyed the book nonetheless. I gave this book 3.75 stars, but I felt really, I don't know, something about it just was not it for me with the Night Circus. I was hoping that the Night Circus will at least be either on par with the Starless Sea or at least a 4-star, because even though I give the Starless Sea again 4.25, I was like, maybe this could be a 4-star, but no, this one just missed the mark on being a 4-star for me, because I am not the kind of a person that really is into romance. Even if romance is a subplot, I have to know going in that there is a romantic subplot, and especially if the romance subplot is heteronormative, like, I have to, like, know that going in. I'm so picky with anything that has romance, whether it's a romance book or a romance subplot, All right, it has to be something about the romance that will make me want to read the damn book. Now, I was reading this book, most of it. I think it was like around halfway through, and I was still enjoying it and stuff, at least physically. But then I had to pick up the audiobook because I put the book down for a while, and I didn't even bother going back to it. And it was because the main characters, Celia and Marco, even though I like their characters separately, when they started to officially, I guess, meet and talk and I guess fall in love, it felt a little bit left field to me. It felt a little bit left field. I didn't like how Aaron Morgenstern wrote that love story on how they become to fall in love. I just saw them as like they appreciated each other's magical prowess, but I didn't understand how they would fall in love with each other. I'm just like, this doesn't fully make sense to me. And also, the magic competition itself also was not making any sense to me. Then again, even the Starless Sea, I'm just like, that one also wasn't fully making sense. But I was here for the vibe and the ride. This one, I was not here for the vibe or ride, okay? But it's still a really good book, though. Again, I did rate this 3.75, and I would recommend this to people. It's just not the kind that I really liked. Maybe if I read this one first, maybe I would have liked it more. I don't know. And also, my particular copy was kind of messed up a little bit. I had to put, like, washi tape on here because the first few pages were, like, coming off on the spine. So this one was already badly bound while I was reading it. So that was not very fun either. So I didn't dog it down because of that, but it did ruin my enjoyment. All right, now for the next one. This one is a short story. Not a collection of short stories, just a singular short story. And that is Recitatif by Toni Morrison. This one I had since last year, actually, when this single hardcover came out. This is actually the first time Recitatif is actually published as a single hardcover. Other times, I think it was in a collection of maybe essays or something. I don't know. It was just in a collection of something. And this is the first time that's actually just in a singular short story kind of hardcover here. And there's an introduction by Zadie Smith. Now, this one, it was almost 5 stars. Almost. It's a 4.75. And it's only because the fact that I read Zadie Smith's introduction before actually reading the short story. I do believe that reading the introduction before the short story actually would actually hinder the experience and the actual thought-provoking experiment that Toni Morrison was going for in this novel. I mean, not this novel. It's not a novel, but I did read a Toni Morrison in February, but no, this is not a novel. This is a short story. It is really, really good. It's very thought-provoking. It's really about, this is a short story where we were following 2 girls. What was their name? Twilight and Robetta. One of them is black, one of them is white, but the narrative does not tell you which one is black or which one is white. Toni Morrison found a way to write a story where race matters without telling the reader which character is which. And it's a really interesting thought experiment. And I really am glad that Zadie Smith wrote an introduction for this short story to give a little bit more context. But I feel like that introduction shouldn't even be in the beginning before we read the short story. I feel like that should have been like an afterword kind of thing. Like something that will come after you read the short story. Because if you read the short story first, then you can just read for the short story for what it is. And then you can have someone explain to you the context. Not like fully explain, but at least give an insight on like the context of it. What it means and like what Toni Morrison was going for. And all that stuff was very insightful. And I'm thankful for Zadie Smith for doing that. It's just that I wish that I didn't read the introduction first. I even did annotate not like the short story, but I did annotate the introduction. It was very, very thought-provoking, very helpful. Again, Toni Morrison will forever be my favorite author of all time. Okay, now, for this next read, this is somewhere in a similar vein with Gideon the Ninth as far as genre. And it's not a space opera, though, but, like, it's definitely a sci-fi fantasy that also confuses me, and that is the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. I will have to admit, this is my very first N.K. Jemisin book. And I actually, even though, yes, you see that I have a physical copy, I read this one for the most part via audio, which I will admit is not a great idea. Because the world building in here is impressive, unique, but also kind of a little bit, it's actually kind of dense. Which I'm just like, how, like, at least with Gideon, because with Gideon the Ninth, even though I was confused, it took me up to around now-ish, maybe a couple weeks ago, that I was like, okay, maybe I did understand how the world works. Can I fully explain it, though? No. But this one, I feel like I have an idea on how the world works, but also I don't know. Now, for anyone who does not know what the 5th season is, this is book 1 of the Broken Heart trilogy. This follows a young woman who finds out that her son is dead, her daughter is missing, and most likely her husband kidnapped the daughter. He's actually, her husband is the one that even killed their son, who was 3, and then took their, I think, 10-year-old daughter. I think the daughter's like 10 years old. And then we follow Esun trying to get her daughter, and then she gonna do something to her husband. I don't know what she gonna do. She probably will kill him, for all I know.
Okay, editing City Girl here, and I'm just looking at myself, and I'm just like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, you're the one who read the damn book, Goofy. Like, what do you mean you don't know? Huh? Anyways, back to the video.
Because we're in this world, this version of Earth called the Stillness, where we have these different seasons, and hence the title of this book called the 5th season. I think that's the best way I can really explain it, because if I try to explain this book anymore, I'm not going to make any sense. I'm just not. I don't even know how to put it into words. But I want to say this is very, very, very good. Like, writing here, first of all, the writing here, I will have to admit, I prefer N.K. Jemisin's writing here than I did with Gideon the Ninth. But I will say, though, that, like, I was still confused, and I kind of wish I treated the 5th season like I did with Gideon the Ninth, as in, you know, reading, like, hybrid reading it with an audiobook and the physical copy, because I just had it audio. Because, again, there was a snowstorm and where I live, and I was shoveling, and I wanted an audiobook to shovel, and I had the 5th season, and, yep, I was reading, I was following along. My brain is still trying to wrap around this series, trying to wrap around this book here. And the thing that's very unique with this book, though, is that it's written in second person, which I don't really read books that are written in second person. And I find that to be very fascinating, especially with the 3 different perspectives we follow, with Damaya, Cyanide, and Esun. And I really liked following all 3 of them. And I also really thought it was a genius with the twist at the very end. Like, there is a twist towards the end of this that I actually was starting to figure out as time went on. I was like, wait a minute, hold up. So again, I feel like I'm understanding this book, but I also don't understand this book. Like, I get it on a surface level as far as, like, plot, what was going on, but as far as what this all means in the grand scheme of things, I feel like I'm missing something. But I do believe that this is completely brilliant. It definitely deserves winning the Hugo Award. In fact, every single one of the books in the trilogy, so the 5th season, the Obelisk Gate, and the Stone Sky, have won the Hugo Award simultaneously, like, not simultaneously, consecutively. So 1 year was the 5th season, the next year after that was Obelisk Gate, the year after that was the Stone Sky. And this entire trilogy has won the Hugo Award. But yeah, I'm definitely going to be reading some more N.K. Jemisin in the future, for sure. And I give this one 4.5 because I felt like this is just more on me. The half star is just more on me for not giving a 5 because I felt like I was just missing something. Like, there was something in this book that I couldn't figure out. And again, that's what I get for not following along with the physical copy and annotating it. I definitely should have annotated this, especially for this world building, because damn, the world building here, genius, just genius. I definitely should not have done audio. And yet here I am making the same mistake anyways, because I'm currently reading the second book, The Obelisk Gate, and I'm reading that one via audio because I don't own a physical copy. Yeah, that's what I get. So, continue to struggle. Now, this book here, this is the first 5-star of the year. I am so glad that someone on Instagram was raving, talking about Simon Jimenez, talking about this book and Jimenez's sophomore novel, which I also do own, and I definitely do plan to read this year. But the book I'm talking about is the debut, which is The Vanished Birds. Now, this one is also another sci-fi fantasy. You can tell that there's a little bit of a trend here in January that I read 3 books that are sci-fi fantasies, and 2 out of the 3 that are sci-fi fantasies are also space operas. This is another space opera. And I'm starting to realize that I think I do like space operas. Now, this one I also was reading via audio for the most part. This one, how do I describe what this book's about? Again, let's see if I can do a synopsis. A ship captain, so there's 3 kind of people generally we follow here. We have a ship captain who's unfeathered from time. We have a mute child who is burdened with unmeasurable power and is a millennial-old woman who's haunted by lifetimes of mistakes. Yes, this is indeed a debut connection across space and time. And we have found family. Yep, that's how I'm going to describe it. This one has a whole theme regarding found family. And the bookstagrammer that I followed that talked about this book in particular described it as like a book that's full of music, like a symphony, which I definitely will agree with because the mute child really likes music. So it definitely makes sense. And also it was one of the major ways that this child was connecting with the people that the ship captain was in charge of, was through music. And I really, really liked it. And because I don't know, I don't even know really how to describe why I gave this 5 stars. I just think this was really great. I really liked all the characters. Even the ones we're meant to hate, I still like them. I really like the protagonist, who's the ship captain. I really like the mute child and the relationship between them. I just love it that it's such a strong found family. I just really, really liked it. I like the narrative structure. I just like so much of it. I don't know how to describe it. All I know is that I just really, really liked it. And also, again, with any of the books that I talk about, you're going to need to search up some content warnings on all of them because I don't be reading light and fluffy stuff, at all. They're warning on content warnings, even with this one as well. I can't really remember on all the content warnings for this one. Besides, there is some death. Yeah, I can't really remember, but, you do need to look up some content warnings. So it's Vanished Birds, Simon Jimenez. Okay? And, yeah, I don't know what to say. But again, this was the very first 5-star of the year, and I'm just really, really glad that I really loved this. I really enjoyed it. It was a great time. I'm definitely going to read more of Simon Jimenez's work. So I have this one, and I do have the sophomore novel, which is Through the Spear Cuts Through Water? Was that what the name of this book? What is the name of this book? Yeah, I was right. The Spear Cuts Through Water. That's what it's called. Okay, cool. But yeah, definitely will recommend this if you can handle the content warnings, because I do not remember all of them. Sorry. Also, there's definitely content warnings as well for the 5th season and just the Broken Earth trilogy in general. So, fair warning on that. A little bit of content warnings as well for Recitatif as well. So, yeah. All these books that I'm talking about in this video, content warnings for all of them. Cool. All right, let me try to get through these things a little bit quicker. Okay, the next book, actually, this is not even a book, this is a short story collection, actually. And I've also been getting a little bit more into short story collections as well. And that is Her Body and Other Parties Stories by Carmen Maria Machado. This is the same author that wrote the author? In the Dream House, yes, which is her memoir. This is her debut, short story collections. This one pretty much has a general theme of women, how women are treated, how their bodies are also, and also the treatment of their bodies as well, hence Her Body and Other Parties. This one I gave 4 stars, just a solid 4 stars, which is really, really good, but not only really but of anything, but there's 8 short stories, and I personally believe the best ones, I think actually the very best one was literally the very first story, which is The Husband Stitch. And The Husband Stitch is honestly literally the best short story. But I'm sad though, because the best one is the very first one. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure that The Husband Stitch is what inspired the cover. This is very much reminiscent of the actual short story itself. And I did rate the individual stories. That's actually even how I was able to come up with the rating for this short story collection, is that I read each one, and I read each short story, and I rated them individually, and it all averaged out to being 4 stars. So the best one for sure is The Husband Stitch, the best one. The one, though, I also really, really liked was the last one, called Difficult at Parties, and also the second to last one was The Resident. The rest one I think I gave 4.5 or maybe 4.75, but Difficult at Parties I gave a 5 star. So it's just really good. It's just these ones in the middle were kind of like, they were pretty good, but also not as good as well. Like, I'm like, they're solid short stories, but I'm just like, we could probably do a little bit better. There's only like one that I generally just did not like, but I still give it 3 stars. Because the writing for it was still pretty good, but like I could not be bothered with this one short story. But anyways, I do recommend this. Do look up content warnings though. And I also want to read Carmen Maria Machado's memoir, In the Dream House. I definitely want to read that for sure, because I really liked her writing and I want to read the memoir. All right, now this next one is one that I actually was introduced to by Jesse from, Jesse on YouTube. And this is definitely one of the books that they recommended a lot. I remember them recommended it several times last year, not just on YouTube, but also mostly also on their Instagram. And that is A Minor Chorus by Billy Ray Belcourt. Now, this one, I really, really like this one. This one I gave 5 stars. Now, this one, how do I even explain what this is about? This feels like, it doesn't, I want to say it's like memoir, because it's not really a memoir, because we are following an unnamed gay, maybe just an unnamed queer indigenous doctoral student who starts to step away from his dissertation and instead wants to write a novel following like some indigenous people some indigenous people that he grew up around, and from his childhood and also from his home at the res as well. And it's like, wow. So this I'm just saying it felt like something that the author experienced, because the author is also queer. I think the author is also Two-Spirit and indigenous. Like, this is like, the author's also Canadian as well, so it is an indigenous Canadian author, which I'm just like, I've never really read many, I don't think I really read books from Canadian authors at all, let alone an indigenous Canadian author. So I'm definitely going to be reading more of Belcourt's works for sure. But with this one, this is fantastic. This is definitely, I'm putting this into the category of dark academia, because we are following a student who's trying to remove himself from academia and trying to instead write a novel. Like, I truly believe that kind of discussion regarding like, how can you as an indigenous person be like, how can you as an indigenous person be a part of an institution that systemically and historically has oppressed and villainized indigenous peoples, for hundreds of years. So it definitely has that discussion. I also really, really, really like Billy Ray Belcourt's writing style here. It's very poetic and thought-provoking, and definitely gives a sense of being a doctoral student. Like, y'all, and it's really, really short, so y'all got no excuse to not read this. It's like 160 pages, okay? And I was annotating it, okay? I was writing stuff in the margin. I had post-it notes. I was having a time, okay? I was having a time with this. I'd recommend it to people. Y'all gotta read it, especially if you're into dark academia. You gotta read this, okay? No excuse. Read this. I do remember myself, though, with some fair warning of police brutality for content warning, incarceration as well, because there's an incarceration of an indigenous man in here as well. Definitely a little bit of racism as well. There's a little bit of sexual content as well. Just gonna let y'all know about that. Yeah, I think that's some of the content warnings I can remember on the top of my head. But again, you'll also need to do a little bit of research yourself. But again, you could also look at Storygraph, where the community will also provide some content warnings. So if you also want to know some other content warnings for any of the books I say, go to the Storygraph for sure, because they will. There's people who provide content warnings. It's right there, just to let y'all know. All right, now for this next book, I got a physical copy from the library. Now, I have my own personal copy because I got actually a copy from Pango, which I'm very, very grateful for, that I was able to get this copy in a particular version. Like, I wanted this one in hardcover because the paperback was just, I didn't like the paperback, okay? The cover for the paperback is just not the vibe for the book. But the book that I'm talking about is The Way of All Flesh by Ambrose Parry. Now, this one is also recommended as well by Jesse. I remember watching one of their older videos, and they were talking about this. And I found out about it. I was like, wait, this sounds interesting. Especially since the author, the Ambrose Perry, is a pen name between two different people, which is husband and wife. They're a husband and wife duo. The husband is a international best-selling author who writes crime novels. And the wife is a consultant anesthesiologist of 20 years experience who has a master's degree in the history of medicine. And they are based in Scotland, which also is where this book takes place. It takes place in Edinburgh, Scotland, 1847. And we follow Will Raven, who is a medical student, Sarah Fisher, who is a housemaid for Dr. Simpson, who is the person that Will is who's going to be the apprentice for, and Sarah is the housemaid for Dr. Simpson's house. And yeah, there's a murder that happens. There's been actually a series of murder that happened with specifically like poor women and even prostitute women as well that just die just mysteriously. Will and Sarah have to work together in order to solve the mysteries, and I had a fun time reading this because this cover is the best, and I definitely want to be continuing on with the series, which I do plan to as well. And I give this one 5 stars. I really liked I really liked the pacing of this novel. And this is actually the first time I've ever read a crime novel. I do like historical fiction, but I never really read a crime mystery novel before. Especially now taking place in Scotland in the 1840s. Like, huh? But yeah, I really had a great time with it. I wasn't too big of a fan of Will at first, but over time he grew on me. He was starting to grow on me. I definitely liked Sarah and her wit and the fact that, sure, she's a housemaid, but like she seems to be pretty knowledgeable, at least on medicine. She just wished that she could go in medicine because at this time period, women could not be doctors, like at all. Not even really even a nurse either. Maybe like a midwife, I guess, but like she at this time. But even for Sarah though, she doesn't have money or much resources to even go for that. But she definitely has the knowledge and definitely has the strength and the perseverance and intellect and the wit to definitely go with that. So I hope in the next books that she will be going into that for sure. I don't know necessarily how long the series is. There's 3 books out, and in fact there's going to be a 4th book coming out in September 26th called Voices of the Dead. I am looking forward to that. Since that's in late September, I'm going to try my best to read The Art of Dying and A Corruption of Blood before I get to that book. But again, I really liked it. I liked the mystery aspect. Content warning on medical content because the kind of stuff that Dr. Simpson and Will are doing is midwifery. So if you're not into like graphic birthing scenes, yeah, don't read this one. The birth scenes are pretty graphic, especially in this lens of being the person that like helps deliver the births. I'm like, huh? There's like tools and medicines and anesthesias. I'm like, huh? A lot, but also just like a lot. It's a lot. It's gory. It's messy. So like, if you're not into all that, then don't really read these books because I'm pretty sure that is going to be pretty. The medical content is going to be very graphic in the series. So don't pick that up if you're not interested in that. But I do think though this is really good in crime. I couldn't necessarily figure out who the murderer was, but when we got to the point though when the pieces starting to come together, then for sure it definitely made sense that for what it was, like who was the murderer and the motivation, like everything makes sense. It's really great. I really like the writing. I really also liked Will and Sarah's relationship. I know at first it was definitely rocky at first, but over time they definitely grew on each other. So I'm glad that I read it, and also want to continue on more and to see what happens in the next one called The Art of Dying. Now, this next one, this is actually kind of a special book for me personally, because this is sent to me by a friend, and I think it's still under pre-order right now, but I definitely just want to give it a little bit more hype because I read it in January, and that is My Lady Perfidy by Haryana Hook. Again, I will link her channel down below and her shop so y'all can pre-order this picture book. Now, if you're wondering what this is about, this is a Gabe Nath inspired picture book. Now, if you don't know what Gabe Nath is, because again, I know I'm in the book community right now, but for anyone who's a fan of Miraculous Ladybug, it's a French show with a girl and a boy. The girl is a ladybug, the boy is cat noir, trying to feed Hawkmoth, who is the villain of the story. And we have Natalie, who is his assistant when he's in civilian form. And yeah, there's a whole nother thing with Miraculous Ladybug, okay? But just know that we're following the adults in the story, okay? we are following Gabriel Agreste and Natalie Sonker. Gabriel is a fashion designer. He's like, think of those like top-notch fashion designers in the world or something. He's pretty much like that stupidly rich. And then Natalie Sonker is literally his assistant. Now, for Haryana, she ships them together, hence the name Gabe Nath for Gabriel and Natalie. And this is actually just like Gabe Nath, but make it black. And it's also a picture book. I don't really want to show too much about it because, like, again, it's in pre-order. I don't know when it's not going to be pre-order, but it is a picture book. I'm just going to show you briefly a page, like right there. Yep. And it's really, really nice. I really like the pictures in here. I like the fact that it's even a picture book in general because I just really like the story. It's very, very short, though. And look, see, there's the back cover there. Look at that. Look at the art. Look at the art. The front cover, the back cover. It's just really, really well made. And my only critique, though, is that it's too short, but I understand. But still, though, we couldn't have made this, could have been longer. Just a little bit. Because it is indeed a little bit of a tragic love story because, like, Gabriel's goal in the series is to pretty much bring back his dead wife. And the thing is, though, is that Gabriel, sure, he still loves his wife, but he also loves Natalie, and Natalie's in love with him. But, like, it's clear that they can't really be together, especially since his goal is to get his wife back. So, like, yeah, y'all, it's a mess. It's a mess, but, like, it's great. I really liked it. I just wish there was just more. I'm like, I wish there was more. You know, I'm the kind of person, likes the short fiction, the short stuff, but, like, I wanted more. Okay, that's literally my only critique. The only critique here is that I wanted more. But that's okay, though. But again, please support Haryana. Go to the shop. I will link it down below. And also pre-order My Lady Perfidy as well. And it is going to be signed. If you get a physical copy, it is going to be signed. See? It's signed. So definitely recommend y'all pre-ordering this. Well, the final book that I read in January, I'm not going to talk too much about this because I will have a video later on this year that this is part of like more of like a video experiment kind of thing I'm going to be doing. But I just want to show y'all the book anyways because I don't want to necessarily be a complete surprise, but y'all just won't know. Y'all won't know what the rest of the books are, but I think you'll have an idea what this video experiment will be. But the book I read, the final book I read in January is Carmilla by Joseph Sheridan LaFono. Now, I have this pumpkin press edition. There are more than one editions of this novella. Now, this is the cult classic that inspired Dracula, Interview with a Vampire, and all I'm just going to say, because I'm not going to say here, because, again, I have a separate video that'll be part of a video experiment talking more about my thoughts and feelings about Carmilla, but I'm just going to say, rating-wise, this is an average one, okay? I'm pretty sure on Goodreads I rounded it up to a 3, but just to let y'all know, it's a little bit less than a 3, okay? Just a little bit less, because I just have some feelings, thoughts and feelings, again, that I will go deeper here. But anyways, yes, that's all the books that I read in January. This is all that I read in January alone. Now, we gotta get to February. And February, if you've seen from my last video and from just looking at my content in February in general, you would know that I had a TBR. I even did reading sprints because February was the annual Blackathon hosted by the Jesse on YouTube, which was a complete honor. I had so much fun with Blackathon. I had so much fun going to people's sprints, hosting sprints of my own. Like, I had my very first sprints on the 7th, and then the last, at least as I'm recording right now it's like March 1st, so for the past 2 days, I was hosting impromptu reading sprints, which I'll also be able to put in either in the cards or link it down below. Either way, like, y'all, I was having so much fun with those sprints. It was so awesome, and I'm so glad for anyone that came in and, like, joined the sprints with me. And I'm so thankful to Jesse for allowing me to host sprints because I was just having a great time. And I can't wait for next year. I'm definitely going to participate in Blackathon again next year for sure. And if y'all ask me again, if Jesse asks me again to host sprints, I will not be saying no because I was having so much fun. And I definitely want to do more sprints in the future. But, yes, let's quickly do some stats. for February, which I'm pretty sure more people are interested with what I read in February more than January. But I just want to combine the things together because just why not? Now, as far as how many books I read, I did read 8 books. Now, if you see my TBR video, I think I only said I wanted to really plan on reading like 5, like the main stuff for the actual like teams and stuff. But I did read a little bit more, which is good. Number of pages, 2,469. And the average read was 4.19. So it's a little bit lower than January, but it's still very, very good. Anything that's like over a 4 average-wise is a really good reading month for me. All right. Now, as far as how successful I was in Blackathon, I would say I was very successful. I did manage to get through the main books for my team, Team Hatshepsut. Yes, that's how I pronounce it. Let's pronounce her name. Now, I got to the main 4 books I wanted to get to, like the 4 prompts, but I didn't get the chance to read or finish reading the group book. Unfortunately, I did not finish the group book. I started it, but I didn't finish it, which is a little bit sad, but everything else was still a success. I will say this was a very, very good. In fact, for me to follow along with a TBR is actually pretty impressive. Even though I definitely did sidetracked from my initial TBR, I still was being pretty focused on reading books by Black authors only. Well, except for the one. There was only one book I didn't read by a Black author. There was only one. One of the 8 was not written by a Black author. I'll admit it was not. But I had my reasons, okay? I had my reasons. Now, let's just get to the books that I read in February. So the very first book I read and finished in February because I didn't have any carryovers from January, so I just started fresh and anew. The first book I read and finished was When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. Now, this one is an adult contemporary mystery thriller that follows a 30-year-old named Sydney, who this takes place in Brooklyn, by the way. There's Sydney, and all I know is that we have Sydney and we have Theo. So Sydney's a Black woman, Theo's like a white man, and they have to work together in order to solve a mystery as far as why people in their neighborhood are gone missing. And I'm pretty sure it has the overarching theme and discussions on gentrification, which is a really, really important discussion to have. However, I did give this book like 3 stars. I still think this is really, really good as far as like discussions regarding gentrification, for sure, especially regarding in Brooklyn specifically. I'm not really familiar though with the New York City, so I can't get maybe some of the minor things regarding that was happening in here. But as far as the actual general topic of gentrification, I can definitely understand that. It's just that I personally was not the greatest. I'm not like a big fan of the writing. I think the writing is fine. I don't think it's the greatest. Maybe that's what happens when I read contemporary for some reason. For some reason with contemporary me, we're just like, it's like hit or miss for some reason with contemporary. And I definitely thought that there were definitely really good writing, though, of descriptions that were very anxiety-inducing and very thrilling regarding like the mystery when Sydney was getting closer and closer to finding out what was going on with her neighbors and like why they were missing, just disappearing. I like the overall message regarding gentrification. I was just not a fan of the writing, and I also wasn't really a fan of the characters themselves. Like Sydney and Theo, I could not with those two at all. And to be honest, I was pretty surprised on how old Sydney was because she wasn't really giving someone in their early 30s. Like she was literally, I think there was actually a line here that said that she was 30 and she was divorced, and I'm just like, I don't know if this is information I really need to know, or if there is stuff I did need to know. I don't see how that fit with her character, because she was not giving like early 30s. She was giving mid 20s, which was which was a little bit confusing. I know like early 30s and mid 20s is not too far off, but it still didn't feel right. Like it felt like she was in her mid 20s, not someone who's 30. That made no sense to me. And then Theo, I don't give a damn about him at all. And I just don't care about the fact that he was just being a white man being white peopling. Like, I don't know how to describe it, okay? I just don't care for Theo at all. And I don't like the fact either that Sydney and Theo also were getting romantically involved with each other, which I just, like, I don't understand. I again, I don't even like the characters individually. I don't even like the fact they're even together. Like, how, what? I'm like, we had other things we should be focusing on. Why do we have, like I said, I don't like romance as a major thing or even as a subplot. And if there's a subplot, I gotta know going in that there's a subplot. I did not know going in that there will be a romantic subplot here. And I was not here for it. So, yeah. But I do recommend this, though, to people. It's still a pretty good read. It's just, I have things that I just couldn't give higher than a 3. But it's still pretty good, though. I definitely do recommend it. It's just not the book for me, unfortunately. Now, the book, though, for me that actually is for me, and it actually is the first 5-star for the month of February. So this will be like the 4th, 5th 5-star. It don't matter, but this is a 5-star rating, and that is Sorrowland by River Solomon. This one is an adult. This is a modern gothic horror. A modern gothic horror with queer characters and has a little bit of a sci-fi element. This one we're following Vern, who escapes this compound as pretty much like a cult, although she is 7 months pregnant and she gives birth to twins, and she has to raise these twins and her children to survive in the woods in order to make sure she does not go back to the cult compound place. Now, this was really, really good. This is actually this is my second book of River Solomon that I've read. The first one I read was actually their debut, which was An Unkindness of Ghosts, which is just straight up sci-fi. This one, and that one also had themes of the antebellum South, and that one took place in space. This one has a sci-fi element regarding more on fungi, which I thought was so fascinating. I love that in the element here. I really liked Vern. Like, she's very she's conversational, she's out loud, outspoken, takes no charge of anything. Like Vern was it, alright? Vern was awesome. I also liked her children. I think they're really fun and entertaining. I like the adventure we were going on. I like also the gothic horror aspects of this book. I don't want to talk too much about it because it is pretty spoilery. But I liked how we got to the end and I'm sorry, I don't know where I was going with that at all. Sorry, lost my train of thought there. But I really did like how this book ended, for sure. Although I do have to keep in mind, though, of content warnings, which thankfully this book actually does provide content warnings at the very, very beginning. Like, where is it? It's like, there's an author's note here, and yeah, as you can tell, the bottom part that I highlighted, it definitely talks about the major content warnings, as in racism, misogyny, self-harm, suicidality, and homophobia, with inclusion of animal death and explicit violence. And there's references to sexual violence that have taken place off page. So, definitely want to let y'all know that if you go into that, just know about that. And there is also, Vern does give birth to the twins, which is in the very first chapter. I wouldn't say it's too graphic, but it's definitely there. There's a little bit of description of that, so if you're a little bit squeamish about that, then maybe not go into this one as well. Even though this book definitely made me think, like, yeah, I think I'm actually into gothic horror. Like, I read Carmilla, which is also gothic horror with some queer element, but, like, that's a classic, and also I'll talk more about that in the video in the future regarding that, but this one is a modern gothic horror with queer characters and also has a sci-fi element that I really, really enjoyed and really liked, so yeah. All I know is that y'all need to read Sorrowland by River Solomon. Please read this book. And this one I also read for the most part via audio, but I was also like hybrid reading a little bit as well, so yeah. Yep. Sorry for if you hear anything. Someone's taking a shower, which is really just right above me. So if you hear all that noise, it's someone taking a shower. So great for me. All right, now the next book that I read is a classic. This is the first classic I read for the month of February. Because again, one of my goals is to read at least one classic a month. And last month I technically read 2, so cool. Maybe 2 or is it 1? I don't know if Recitatif is a classic or not. I don't know. Anything by 20 more, so I'm considering the classic. So, yes. I will say I read 2 classics last month. And this month I also did read 2 classics. And this classic is a pretty, I don't know, I would say beloved, but it's a well-known classic. And that is Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. Now, I'm just going to preface this by saying that I have conflicted feelings about this book. Conflicted feelings as far as the experience, but also on how brilliant James Baldwin is. Was for writing this, for the time period, and even reading it now. Even though I did give this book 5 stars, I gave it the 5 stars. I think it was really, really good, very thought-provoking, and I think it's really important in our classic literature. However, this was a hard read for me to get through. It is short, but it was hard. And in fact, this book alone was the reason why I kind of sidetracked from my initial TBR for Blackathon. Because this has because of the content warnings here. So I'm going to be saying a little bit of the content warnings because it did hinder a little bit of my enjoyment. It took me actually 4 days to read this. I initially planned to read it like in 1 day or maybe 2, but it took me twice as long to read it because of how it made me feel while reading it. So enjoyment-wise was not up there. But I did give it 5 stars. So I did have conflicted feelings. And now the content warnings for this is a lot. I think the 2 main ones for sure I have to mention is the internalized homophobia. Because we do follow a young white man. This takes place in the 1950s Paris. And there's an American man named David. He's a white man. And he starts to develop... Actually, not even starts. He has a couple instances of having feelings for other men. But again, with his internalized... But then he's been dealing with a lot of internalized homophobia. And internalized homophobia is a lot. It is rampant. It is even the descriptions of feminine men, I would say is also a little bit uncomfortable as well. I'm not totally sure if it's because of the fact that this book is written in David's perspective, and that's why it's coming off of that, but also it is because of the time period as well. Because this book came out in 1956, and I think it's also a little bit of a reflection of James Baldwin's time when he also went to Paris as well. And it's just so interesting on how he wrote these characters. But I have to say, though, there's graphic internalized homophobia. David is really, really dealing with, he's almost very self-hating. It's a lot of self-hatred. It's not even really until we get to the end where he starts to really come to accept himself. But if you start reading this, it made me feel really bad. I'm like, damn, man, you really just... It's the self-hatred for me. I'm just like, damn, it really made it a very uncomfortable reading experience. And what the thing, though, that made me really uncomfortable, though, was the misogyny. There is one character, actually, Giovanni himself, actually. Giovanni's a character here who's also an Italian man. He's a white Italian man. And he says several misogynistic things about women. It's a lot that really made me uncomfortable and angry. And while I was reading it, it took me a little bit while to think of why was Giovanni being so misogynistic. I couldn't tell if it was because of its time period or this just made this book problematic. But the thing, though, that the back of this book here says that this is a highly controversial story, and I can see why. Not just because of this internalized homophobia and dealing with 2 queer men just coming together, but then the deal with the self-hatred, but also just reading the misogyny in here was really uncomfortable. So if you do read this, I need to preface this by saying that on how much the internalized homophobia and the misogyny is, because it was very uncomfortable. But I'm just glad, though, that the person who was really misogynistic is the one that dies. It's not really a spoiler, to be honest, that Giovanni is the one that dies, because it's actually... The book tells you that in the pretty early on, that David is sad at the fact that Giovanni is going to be executed. That's literally in the very, very beginning of the book, so that's not a spoiler. So I'm kind of happy. I'm actually pretty happy that the one who's very misogynistic is the one that dies. So that's helpful for me, but it wasn't very helpful while I was reading it, just to let people know. And there's definitely a toxic relationship in here. I think the toxic relationship is really between David and his girlfriend, soon to be a fiance. I don't remember her name. Yeah, but I want to say this is really I think this is really like a cautionary tale of when you don't truly accept yourself. Yes, that's what this is. The Giovanni's Room is a cautionary tale. And I actually want to give a dedicated book review for this because I just have a lot of thoughts that I want to like take the time to really process, write down, and talk to people about this. And I actually am curious too. Please comment down below if you have read Giovanni's Room. Let me know your thoughts on it, or if you've read anything by James Baldwin at all, because this is my very first James Baldwin work. I also do own his debut, Go Telling on the Mountain, which I also do plan to read, but like I do want to read more of his work because his writing here is really, really great. I really enjoyed it, and in fact, while I was reading this, it actually reminded me of the death of Vivek Oji by Okweke Emezi, except that the death of Vivek Oji, even though sure that was also sad because again in the title itself you could tell that someone dies, like Vivek Oji dies and is important and stuff, but like it didn't. Even though that one was also sad, but the death of Vivek Oji also had this sense of joy, and at least for the character Vivek was also giving this sense of joy and self-love and acceptance for himself or for themselves. Sorry. So if you've read Giovanni's Room, I would recommend also reading The Death of Vivek Oji, although I can't really even talk much about the content warnings for the death of Vivek Oji besides like death and murder. There's also death and murder in here as well, and violence, toxic relationship, internalized homophobia, misogyny, so let y'all know about that. Y'all will be seeing a dedicated review for this one because I have some thoughts. I have questions. Yeah. And I also did annotate this one as well. I only really did it in pencil though, but I also had some notepad stuff in here as well. But yeah, it has its own video. Now for the next book I'm going to talk about, I'm actually going to be talking about two books, even though I didn't read one of them this month. This is part of a series and I just really want to talk about it. And that is Amari and the Night Brothers, and then Amari and the Great Game. I read Amari and the Great Game in February. This one I read in December. And I just really want to talk about these books because finally, I kind of should have mentioned this when I was talking about When No One Is Watching, because When No One Is Watching is under William Morrow, which is an imprint of HarperCollins. And I want to say that congratulations to the HarperCollins Union for getting a fair contract, and they've actually been back to work since Tuesday, February 21st. So congratulations. I'm so happy for them. I'm so happy they got a fair contract. They're getting raising the wages and diverse employees. It's like just everything. I'm just so happy. And now I can also talk about books that are under the imprint of HarperCollins. So if you did not know about that, I'm just letting you not know. I'm letting y'all know about that now. Cool. So I want to really talk about a little bit of Amari, book 1 and also book 2. But I did read book 2 though in February. I just want to have Amari and the Night Brothers because look how beautiful the cover is. Look at that. Look how beautiful both covers are. But anyways, Amari and the Night Brothers follows Amari Peters, who gets introduced to like a supernatural world in order to find her brother, because her brother is missing and she's trying to find her brother. So that's been book 1. Book 2, we're continuing on with that, and Amari is dealing with like a lot of stuff going on, but then she has to participate in the Great Game in order to pretty much see who's going to be the leader of all the magicians in the supernatural world and all that. So I really liked both books. This one, from the Night Brothers one, I gave 3.5 stars last year. This one I give a solid 4 stars. This was just a book I really need to read. In fact, I actually read both these books as like palate cleansers because they were just fast, easy. It's middle grade contemporary fantasy, and I just really needed something easy to read after reading Giovanni's Room. So I couldn't snag an audiobook, so I just read it physically, which is fine because it's a fast-paced read. And I was really having fun with this one. I really like Amari. I like the world here, and I don't really read a lot of middle grade, but like this is a series I'm definitely going to continue on reading. The series is called Supernatural Investigations, and there will be a 3rd book. I don't know when the 3rd book will be coming out though, so I'm going to be looking to see on like more news from BB Alston as far as when book number 3 is going to come out, as far as like a title and a cover. Like I want to know, like, does anyone know when book number 3 is coming out? Is it going to be this year? Is it going to be next year? And this is definitely a series that I actually really wish though I would have read in middle school. So these are definitely books I definitely will recommend to middle schoolers out there and some young readers just in general. Or if you're just an adult that you want to read something light, funny, and easy, and just something quick and fast paced, then I recommend this series. There are 2 books right now, not too long of a commitment. So yes, definitely continue on, please, please, please. All right, y'all. We have a few more to go. All right, and this is a long one, but we have a few more to go. Now, another book I read is actually an ARC. I've actually finally got a physical ARC. And I got this actually for a sweepstakes that was hosted from Tor.com on their Instagram. And I actually won the sweepstakes for it. And I'm so happy that I did because I really like this one. The Lies of the Ajungo by Moses Osei Utomi. And this one is coming out March 21st. So it's coming pretty soon, later on this month, so you have time to read this. And he's also the author of Daughters of Oduma, which is a YA fantasy. This one's an adult fantasy novella. It's really, really short. Sorry, there's the art print here, which actually does explain what this book is about. I mean, this novella is about, which actually is going to be a series. This is the first in a series. I think this is going to be a trilogy of novellas, which I'm looking forward to. This is in a city of lies. They cut out your tongue when you're 13 to appease the Ajungo Empire. Make sure it continues to send water. But Tutu will be 13 in 3 days, but his parched mother won't last as long. So Tutu goes to like the leader to make a deal. If the leader, the Oba, provides water for his mother, and in exchange he will travel out of the desert to bring back water for his city. And thus Tutu is on a quest for salvation for his mother, his city, and himself. Now, I really had fun with this one. This is also really, really short, though. This is, the arc I have is 84 pages-ish. I don't know how long the final copy is. It might be a little bit closer to 100 pages. But I really did like this one. It gives up a little bit like a fable, as in, like, it wants to teach you, the reader, a lesson, a very important lesson, like a life lesson, like any fable does. And I really like the fantasy world and like the desert and the fight scenes. Is definitely action packed a little. It's definitely has some action here. So definitely kind of worrying on murder, gore, violence, death. There's also parental death in here as well. Dehydration in here because again we're in the desert. Yeah, this one I gave 4.25 stars. I think it's really, really good. I do believe, though, that, again, I know this is a novella. I knew going into this was going to be short. But I was surprised when I got the arc that it was that short. I didn't expect it to be 84 pages. Even for a novella, I felt like this was a little bit, just a tiny bit, a little bit too short. It could have been a little bit longer. Maybe an extra 10, 20 pages. But that's just me, personally. Because I know, the common critique when it comes to novellas is like, oh, it's too short. I wish it was longer. Look, I understand that, but it's also like you knew going in it was a novella. And that's why I keep telling myself, you knew going in it was a novella. Although I did not expect it to be an 84-page length novella. For me personally, I did not expect it to be that short. Because I've read novellas that were a little bit longer, like a little bit over 100 pages. But I am looking forward to reading more from Moses and to also read his actual debut novel, which is Daughters of Oduma. I definitely look forward to that. I've been hearing a little bit of some good hype and some buzz, although it needs way more hype and more buzz, especially for him as well. I cannot wait for books 2 and 3 in this Forever Desert series. That's what the name of the series is, Forever Desert. I definitely look forward to reading more of this. So yes, shall be reading more. Please pre-order this and also get a copy of Daughters of Oduma. I haven't read it yet, but I don't care. I'm going to read it, and I think it'll be amazing. Now, this next one I read, because again, as you could tell from the recent reads that I recently talked about, we've kind of sidetracked from the main books, which is fine. It's fine, but I definitely sidetracked here to this next read. And I don't have a physical copy of it because I just borrowed it from Libby. I borrowed the audiobook for it, and it is The Paper Menagerie and Other Stories by Ken Liu. Now, this isn't the first time I'm reading anything by Ken Liu. This one I also gave 4.25 stars. I think it was really, really good. I definitely liked a lot of stories. I can't, again, remember too much of them because I read them via audio and I don't have a physical copy. I couldn't write notes, so I can't really talk too much on the stories in general, but I really liked how the stories had a general theme of culture, identity, love, and all of that. I just really Really like those themes. I like from the short stories. And he's a really good writer too. I like his writing. So yeah, I think I can't remember too much on like the names of the short stories. I remember there was a couple of them in the beginning. There's a one in the middle called All the Flavors, and I really like the Paper Menagerie, the actual short story that the collection is named after. I really like that one. I remember liking a couple as well towards the end, and the other ones I'm thinking they were pretty good, although I can't remember them, and there's a few that were not that memorable, unfortunately. But nonetheless, though, I think that was all a pretty good a very good collection. I'm definitely going to read more of his work. So it looks like though his earlier works is definitely short fiction, and then the Dandelion Dynasty is more of his long form, the novels, as far as I can tell, which is good enough for me because now I'm a little bit more intrigued with the Grace of Kings now. Now for this next read, this is also another short story collection, but this one's actually written by a Black author this time. And this one I had for a little bit while because I was like, okay, I wanted to read this one first because it's also like a debut collection, because I think the Paper Menagerie is Ken Liu's debut short story collection. Yeah, and then for this one, it's also another debut, which is Love in Color, Mythical Tales from Around the World, retold by Bolu Babalola. This one is written by, I think she's British Nigerian. Yes, she's British Nigerian. Cool. So this is a collection of short stories just focusing on love around the world, and this is her debut, just in general, just written writing and stuff, and it's a short story collection. I read this one pretty much via audio, even though I had a physical copy, but I was just not too interested in it. Even when I first started, I was like, yeah, maybe I could just hybrid read, but then I was listening to the audiobook, and I was like, you know what? No, I'm not gonna hybrid read this one. Because this one I gave, this was also pretty good. It's pretty solid. I gave this one 3 stars. I recommend this. It's just, like I said, time and time again, I'm not the kind of person who really likes to read romance as a main thing or as a subplot. Especially not if it's heteronormative. And a lot of the short stories, in fact, almost all the short stories are heteronormative. There's only one that was not. And which one was that one? I think that was Nefertiti. Yeah, I was not I mean, the stories are fine. I think they're good. I like her writing. It's just, I wasn't necessarily vibing with all the stories, okay? I think the stories are all just collectively good. I think in my head, I give them consecutively just 3 stars. I'm like, they're all good, just not great or amazing, but it's decent and stuff. And it's very clear that Babalola definitely really loves love. In fact, that's what's said in the introduction and the author's note. And actually, there's a story, I think the final short story was inspired by the love story between her parents and how they met. It was definitely inspired by that. In fact, in the narration, in the audiobook, Babalola and her mother both narrated the final short story, which I thought was really, really cool. But like, again, I liked it, but like, I was hoping to at least really like it or even love it, but I just can't. Although I am interested, though, to read her, the novel Honey and Spice. I'm still really interested in reading that one. I just wished that I liked this one more. But that's okay, though. I'll still leave it on my shelf. I still really like it. Because I hear really good things, too, about Honey and Spice. Even though I also know that it is... I know Honey and Spice is also a heteronormative story as well. But it takes place in college. So I'm like, I think I can at least learn a little bit more of the college romance, I guess. For, like, my age group. So, like, I think that'd be intriguing. Other than that... But I still want to read it, though. I'm going to read it. And I do recommend Love in Color to people. This is definitely a lot more of a lighthearted read, though, just to let y'all know. This is pretty light. Now, this is the final book I read in February. The final book I'm going to be talking about. Because this one, I was trying to make sure I finished before February. This is part of, like, the main... I finally went back to the original TBR. You know, because as you can tell, at the beginning of the month, I went, like, the first 3 out of 5 books for my original TBR. And we went off the tracks, but then we're coming back on the main track again, okay? And that is Sula by Toni Morrison. Now, if you were in my reading sprints, both reading sprints. The one on the 27th of February, the one on 28th of February, and even on Jesse's final impromptu reading sprints as well. I was talking about me wanting to finish reading Sula. Now, Sula, we're following, well, according to back here, because, again, I don't know how to give synopses. I'm just giving y'all a general sense here. We follow two young girls who become women who are friends, Nell and Sula. But as time goes on, they start to drift apart as friends. And, yeah, I'm just going to go with that because what else am I supposed to say? This one, again, brilliant. Really, really enjoyed it. I really, really liked it. Even though I was also having a time as well with Sula because the characters in here, again, Toni Morrison knows how to write nuanced, complex characters. Like, she's the author for you, especially with black characters and black women. Like, if y'all want some nuanced characters with you or like some that are likable or unlikable, like, Toni Morrison is the author for you. Okay, especially in this one. Like, Sula was letting me be stressed. I'm like, damn, Sula, why are you out here in these streets? But again, I give it 5 stars. Can I really explain why? No, because I literally just finished it like yesterday, and my brain is still trying to process everything. But I really do recommend it. I do want to give content warning, though, for... wait, I think I wrote it down somewhere. What did I write down? I wrote down the content warnings. Yeah, death, child death, fire injury, racism, racial slurs, and infidelity. Just to let you know about that. And also, I also forgot to mention too that there's a little bit of a minor content warning for suicidal thoughts. Just to let y'all know for whoever reads this. But yes, I literally recommend anything written by Toni Morrison, okay? Even if I don't give it a straight up 5 stars, I'm recommending it to you anyways. With caveat, of course. But like, if it's not 5 stars for some reason. But please read more Toni Morrison. And I will be reading more Toni Morrison. This is actually the sophomore novel. Sula is the novel that came after The Bluest Eye, which I did read. I read Beloved and The Bluest Eye last year, and now I've read Recitatif in Sula. And I will be reading more for works. But anyways, that is all the books, plus also Paper Menagerie, somewhere around here as well. These are all the books that I read in the month of February. Now, as far as all the books I read in the past 2 months, I'm not trying to get all that. But anyways, thank you for coming onto this channel. If you want to see other bookish content, then I recommend y'all going down to the description and looking at my link tree, where it has all links to my social media, so my Instagram, my Twitter. If you want to talk about film stuff, then like Letterboxd is in there. Oh, I have Goodreads, Storygraph in there. All right, but again, thank you again for coming to this channel. I hope y'all really liked it. Really liked this video. If you did like the video, please like it. Also, comment your thoughts, opinions. Also subscribe as well if you really like my content. And if you want to comment something but you're not totally sure what to comment, let's pick an emoji. Let's pick an emoji to comment down below. Comment down below a heart. It could be any kind of heart. It can be like a general heart. It can be anatomical heart. Just like a heart emoji of any kind down below. And I hope to see you all in my next video or whatever I'm doing onto the internet. Bye.